Hello, hello. Good. Welcome back after lunch. And the next panel will have a difficult job to keep the room energized after all the food, but you're in really good hands. And also a very efficient panel already sitting behind me, so I'll keep it very short. Now the third section of the day and third panel discussion of the day will be focusing on a very important topic, which is definitely becoming more and more popular and discussed, and should be discussed even more often, and you'll hear why. And we will be looking into sustainability in real estate and how we can rethink real estate and how we can actually make sure that also real estate and buildings are sustainable and are not contributing to greenhouse gas emissions in the future and are actually net zero. So without maybe any further ado, I will give you, I'll give the word to the moderator of the panel, and that is Raúl Garcia Rodriguez, who's the Director for Sustainability Services at Deloitte for Czech Republic and Slovakia, and also DC Sustainable Real Estate Leader. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you very much for organizing the panel and organizing such a great event once again. So it was great last year, it's been great this year. Let's make sure that we also have a good panel. We're very blessed with the panel that we have in here, with very good real estate, very seasoned real estate people that I will let them introduce themselves so they can say something about themselves, and then we will kick off with some questions that I have ready. Please, if anybody has a question for any of the topics, there is a Slido working, right? And if somebody has something that you cannot wait, then raise your hands, and we have some microphones so we can make this a little bit more interactive. So, Richard.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Wilkinson. I'm the CFO and Deputy CEO of CTP. We are the largest listed owner of commercial and so industrial and logistics real estate in Europe.
Thank you. My name is Stefan de Goeij. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm the chair of the advisory board RICS Czech Republic. We have approximately 120 members, professionals here in Czech. The RICS itself is much larger, with 150,000 members all over the world globally, and we share and cooperate momentarily with certain bodies like the World Green Building Council on terms of ESG. I have a long history with my neighbor as well, with CTP, where I acted as a sustainability officer for the group, and currently I'm freelancing in the ESG world.
Patrick.
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Patrick Choleva. I am CFO of Skanska Central Europe. So it means that we have like 5 countries for that conference, from the Poland down to the Czech and Slovakia and Romania and Hungary. I'm coming from construction business, so not so much from developer side, but we at Skanska, we have both streams, so developers for commercial and residential, and also for construction. But I will try to give you some hints also from that construction side, what we can do, what we are doing in that sustainable area. For Skanska, for us, this is the major topic and one of the major focus which we have in our long-term history, as we are coming headquarters, we are in Sweden, so we are like a, I think, clean, green, Swedish, nice company. So that's what we feel that we are. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omar Sattar. I'm very happy to be on the panel today. I'm an independent property consultant, but one of the things I do is I'm a non-executive director of a very large property company called CPI Property Group, and I also chair their ESG committee. Briefly about CPI, they have about 6.5 million square meters that they own across about 11 countries. They cover offices, hotels, residential, retail as well. They also have some agricultural land, and they even have a ski resort as well. And they have quite a defined policy or pathway on how they want to approach the ESG world. So I'm sure we'll touch on that. Thank you.
That's great. So as you can see, we have a very broad map of what we can ask them, and to know from all sides of the business how can we embed sustainability into real estate? So I'm going to start with Richard, because Richard has a past in the banking industry with the bad boys, and then he came to the worst ones, who are the real estate guys. And I would like to be a little bit controversial. I know he's going to be, and to dare him to tell us how the capital could or could not, or is a enabler or a blocker of the transition into more sustainable real estate.
Yeah, so if I look back, I've been with CTP for 5 years now. Before that, I was with Erste for nearly 30 years. And I used to run the largest real estate lending business in Central Europe. And when I was making decisions then, green ESG was not really a topic. And I would say that it wasn't really a topic for the first 3 or 4 years that I've been with CTP. If I start talking to the banks now and say, guys, I would like to borrow some money, bond markets are not really very attractive at the moment, they will turn around and say, yeah, Richard, great, we love CTP, we love everything about you, great portfolio, all of those things, but I need to know that what are you doing concretely in terms of improving something to do with ESG. And all of that comes from the ECB, which is requiring the banks to prove that the new money that they're lending is doing something to help improve ESG, however that is done. Yeah? And increasingly the banks are asking for rather concrete things like EPC certificates and improvement in energy efficiency. So the days in the past where you could say, okay, I've got my BREEAM certificates and this is all I need, they're moving into the past. And one of the things I've been saying for some time is people are going to have to start actually showing what they're actually doing to actually make an improvement and not just write things down in a policy and say, I'm green. So, that's the real change that's happening, and that will force a change in the real estate industry over time, because the real estate industry can't survive without funding. So no one is going to do real estate with pure equity. So as soon as you want money, you're going to either take it from the bond markets. Bond markets are increasingly looking for green bonds, but with real links, not just something where I say I'm green, but someone is really coming in and auditing what you are doing. So the chance for people to just say I'm doing it, those days are going away. So yeah, what will drive people actually doing things going forward, and Stefan was one of the big drivers for us in being a leader in the industry. Now the banks are going to force everyone else to do it as well. So just saying it is not going to cut the mustard anymore.
So you're already mentioning Stefan, and I was going to ask Stefan to link. You've worked together in CTP. Stefan has worked also as a consultant, and now is working with risks. And I think Stefan is very well equipped to tell us how this green finance can bring an extra. We talk a lot about green premiums and brown discounts. Do you think this is happening already, or it's not yet implemented in the market?
Not yet. No, it is coming, but it's not there yet. It's not yet implemented.
Here we go.
It's coming. It's here. It's now. The loans that we're signing now have a green discount. So if we hit certain criteria, we get a lower margin.
Yeah, so and what they are asking, so what we were doing is on a certain KPI level, because what I felt also with my time at CTP, it's for the banks, it's also a course. They're on a road, also exploring, asking even the developer, CTP in this case, what would be your best practice, what could you deliver to us, and then you go on that road together. So we're absolutely moving in the right direction. but there's still a few steps to make. And I'm very happy what Richard said is that only the policy making, or we hire Deloitte and then we put it in a drawer and we just pull it out whenever it's necessary. Those days are indeed over, because they're really on top of you and breathing in your neck. Yeah.
So, Patrick, you are the CFO of a construction company. When somebody comes to you and tells you, one of you guys tells you, we have to embed something new, we have to add some innovation to what we use here because there is something that will give us an added value, a sustainability value, but you're the one paying, you're the one footing the bill. How do you assess whether this is or is not a cost that you want to take to there, or is it a cost, is it an investment? How do you look into this?
But it doesn't have to be CFO, and even if we are on finance summit here today, so it's about the normal business. It's a capitalism which we have here, so it needs to bring some business case at the end, the project, which you build. So you need to find the client. And now it's very difficult to find the client who will be able to pay it. Because if I'm from construction company, so we can build whatever you would like to have, but we need to be able to sell it. Mm-hmm. And if we will start to implement some sustainable products there, we need to find a client who will be able to pay. Mm-hmm. And there are some clients. It's not that there are no clients at all. Even at Skanska, we have, as I said, two streams. We have developers and construction. And our developers for commercial and residential business, all these projects which we are building, they have all certificates, BREEAM, LEED, WELL. We are doing the top class, the products in world, not only here in Central Europe. I'm convinced about it. So, but anyway, it's still difficult to find the client. But we are finding the client. They are mainly from Western countries, investors who are going to buy it. But to convince for residential the family to buy flat, which is 10% more expensive because it has some sustainable issues there, it's not so easy. So we need to go step by step and to find even solutions which are cheaper, I can say. So I know it was today even discussion. But there is another aspect which should family look, and also the big companies. Look at the whole life cycle of the product. Not just what does it cost today, like 10 million cost me the flat, but then I will need to pay for energies, water and everything. But if you look at the whole life cycle, you see that you need to pay something now, more, but then you have a lot of savings on the way. So it's valid also for the whole building, for the whole offices. So you need to look from the whole really life cycle and not just the purely what does it cost today.
Right. And I'm going to now reach to you, Omar, because you were talking about the experience with many different types of real estate, different usage for the types. Now, in which of those uses, or which ones are the ones that could be drivers to show to the rest? Because in the end, when you produce real estate, it doesn't really matter which kind of real estate. There are certain structural things to do that you always have to do. Where do you see more traction into it? It's more into residential, into the commercial, into infrastructure?
I wouldn't say any of them are leading. I think all real estate sectors have an ESG agenda. I don't think any of them are particularly perhaps leading the way at this time. You could maybe say that depending if you're in an older warehouse and you're manufacturing something, then your carbon footprint might be more intense than an office building, for example. But that's around consumption and energy use. So I think all sectors are trying to address their carbon footprint in different ways, and the whole market is at different speeds. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a panel here which have a very embedded or sophisticated, by market standards, by comparison, sophisticated look at how ESG needs to be addressed. But there is a whole element of the market, and I couldn't put a percentage around it, which isn't quite sure what to do, isn't quite sure how to do it, isn't quite sure what standards they should be following, and isn't quite sure of the benefits yet. And there's going to be an element of education around that, and awareness, some standardization, which allows people to compare things. So that's going on, but maybe that's not addressing your question. So I don't see any leaders yet. Originally in the sustainability world, in the commercial world, the the pioneers of sustainability was in the office sector. But then sooner or later, the other sectors started to catch up, warehouse logistics, retail, and residential.
So then I turn the question to Richard. You were talking about the tenants. Richard, you have tenants all over Europe, almost and across and above, beyond Europe. Where do you see more sensitivity in your tenants? Your tenants are big companies. They need big industrial premises for logistics and for production sometimes. Where is the biggest sensitivity? Where is something that we can look and say, these guys are ahead?
Yeah, well, most tenants will tell you they're going to pay more to be green. Sorry to say that's bullshit. Sorry for swearing, but it's not true. For most, there are a limited number of clients now who are really starting to say, for my operations, I really need to have, by 2030, carbon neutral buildings. They are the very large 3PLs that have the same constraints that I mentioned earlier. Their investors, their financiers are saying, you need to be green, and you need to actually do it. So if you look at a DHL or a Kuehne + Nagel, they have a very clear policy that they then also communicate to their landlords and say, this is what I need your buildings to do. And if your buildings can't do this, then by 2030, I'm moving out or I'm not taking new space with you. But that's a very new phenomenon. Most people will say that they will do it, and they will not.
I see. And then I was seeing, I think Patrick is...
Yeah, I hear what Richard was saying. Yes, there is a few clients, but more and more, they are coming. Like every year is more and more. So if I remember the clients, ESG, so even today, a lot of them that doesn't know what does it mean. They are now good at spelling at least. It's helping, but it's going step by step. It's more this client. And I don't know how you have, but we at Skanska also we have been neutral even earlier than 50. We are 45, and we are working on that already now. So there is a lot of things which you can do, and I think the big companies, they have a lot of them to have such ambitions as well. And we will be pushed by that. So, and this is the market need to create the demand for that. Yeah. We as I don't know, developers, construction, we will not do it so easily when the clients will not demand it.
It's a push on your supply chain.
Although there is statistics around this that buildings with the highest level of sustainability ratings in terms of LEED and BREEAM achieve higher rents than other buildings. Mm-hmm. The numbers I've seen are around about 6%, and in some markets as much as 10 and 15%. So there are examples where people or companies, organizations will pay you a little bit more to have a more sustainable building because it's within their own policy to be carbon neutral by a certain date. So there's been a lot more focus on this in the last 24 months.
In offices especially.
Yeah, and so, we'll see if that pans out going forward.
Now, one of the things we always talk about is total cost of occupancy, because the more energy efficient the building is, which goes back to your point, Patrick, the cheaper it is to be in the building and operate it. So, one thing is the rent that you pay. The other thing is how much do you pay when you're actually in the building to run your operation. And if you're running in a much more energy inefficient building, you will actually spend a lot more being in that building. If you're in an old flat that has no insulation, you pay a lot more for the heating than you do in the new one with the right construction standards. So you have, there's a huge benefit of the investment up front. But if my head office is saying you can't pay more than this much headline rent, okay, then I will rent the inefficient building, and it will cost me more over the next 10 years. So that's not smart from the tenants, but that's the way that people sometimes think about it. They think about what's the short term, not the long term.
Yep. Yeah. So it's very important to make it visible for them, and possibly also give a guarantee on that, or put money where your mouth is. So then you go towards green leasing already, or saying, I cap your electricity consumption. If you go above €1.20 per square meter, the rest will be for us because you trust your product. You know it, you did it. So this will the market will be going there for sure.
This is a good point. That you mentioned something on green leasing, and then in my past as real estate professional as well, we had a lot of opportunities where we saw the clients coming to us and saying, hey, we want to touch the building because we want it to be more efficient. And whether it was the envelope, so isolation materials, or it was the installations that we had, in most occasions, we as landlords will not like them to touch the building. So we will have to sit down and put the contract on top of the table and open the green leases and say, okay, who pays for what? And what is the payoff? So if you do it as a tenant, most likely you would like to say, okay, I will do this, so I want a discount in the rent, or the annual increase will stop for a few years, so there is no indexation to the rents, or maybe I'm very happy where I am, so I want the period of compulsory compliance to be longer. It depends on who does that. Whereas if he was the landlord, it would probably be something similar. Yeah, you will pay this, but because installations, if he was installations, or if he was the envelope, it would be different timeline for depreciation. But there is always this element. Now, Stefan, you have worked on consultancy. Do you see this happening in the region already? Do you see green leases being put on the table?
Yes, absolutely. This is moving fast forward. The CTP is already a good example who took the initiative from themselves. Every moment with a tenant, existing tenant, there's a moment or an opportunity to discuss that with them and have the green lease clause in there. If you have a new lease agreement, you can already force it forward. I'm currently working on a project here in Prague where the owner, landlord, indeed asks me or the consultancy company to give them, let's say, a guideline or suggestions how to put it in there. This is also protection towards EU taxonomy. For example, if a tenant in a larger building wants to retrofit more than 25% on either installations, as you just mentioned, EU taxonomy starts to say already this needs to be, let's say, eligible with sustainable investments. You need to prove that the investment that you are making is really environmental friendly. If you don't have that green lease clause, you can tell your tenant, you need to follow this, but if he or she says, I don't know, if you want to pay with me, sure, then I'm open to discuss that, but if you're not paying, then, it's my money, I do what I want, So this is also already a protection for the landlord in this case, but also for the tenant. So yes, we see it coming forward quite quickly at the moment. Yeah.
So then I'm going to turn to you, Omar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe for the audience point of view, it's maybe important to maybe mention, what is a green lease? This is a terminology that's been used. They were just commercial leases, like a lease contract that you had. Now, as companies are moving to a more sustainable footing, they're imposing or trying to agree conditions within the contracts, or even some sort of partnership agreement. So there might not be any sanctions for not performing, but this kind of cooperation agreement where there's a sharing of data, there is a way of how the building should be used, there is a kind of a two-way process of dialogue on what improvements can be done to the building, and maybe if there's major improvements to be done, what type, and maybe what impact that would have as a cost to the tenant. So it's just a framework. There's a dialogue between landlord and tenant in terms of how they're communicating, and many more landlords are trying to have these in the contracts that have. So when they sign a new lease or when they renew the lease of the tenant. So just to give you a bit of a framework of why we're talking about green leases and what do they actually mean.
Thank you. That's a great clarification for everybody. That I then want to bring to Patrick into something, because we're already talking on green lease as an enabler for retrofitting. And we have an issue with the amount of buildings that we have that were produced that are not efficient, that should be changing into something more efficient. So construction now has to think into how are they going to make these buildings more efficient. Some of them have been recently produced in the last 15 years, so you will not consider those already depreciated. They're not old buildings, but they're not efficient. What do we do there, Patrick?
Yeah, of course, all the buildings which are already existing, it's quite difficult to make them even more efficient. So it costs something more. Much easier is when you start with on the green field, with something when you can implement all this stuff in the plan, in the design. Then you can do a lot of much more than to do these refurbishments and all this stuff, which we have as well anyway. But honestly, it's much more easier to start, and if you implement everything at the beginning, it's much cheaper than to make some repairs. Just one example, if I can use the new one which we implemented in one of our projects, we call it like grey water. It means that you are using the water from bathrooms through the sinks everywhere. It's going to the cleaning house in the bottom on the ground floor, and water is clean, and then is put it back and used for the splashing of toilet. And it's creating 25% less consumption year to year for the whole building. But of course, at the beginning, you need to invest in the second pipelines on that. But once the building is already on the floor, standing somewhere, you will not do it, never. You can just talk about, I don't know, windows and other isolation and so on. But such a dramatic moves you need to do at the beginning of the life of the building.
So if we take from that and we're thinking, okay, there is a cost to do the retrofitting. There is a cost to all this. Big landlords like CTP, would you approach somebody to help you financing this? Will you go to the EU funds and look into it and say, because the EU funds are also there so that the people can use money to improve. And of course, large landlords will be profiting from it eventually. What will be the take of a large company like CTP on EU funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues for the EU is trying to make sure they provide the money, but provide it in a way that's not so intrusive that people say, you know what, on that basis, I don't want to take the money. Yeah, if you're going to look in every single thing that I do, I'd rather not take the money. It can't be cheap enough. You're too expensive. Where I think that they are doing the right thing is in terms of providing financing for alternative energy sources. So, we own around 11 million square meters of roofs. So that's, if we can put a photovoltaic plant on all of those, that's 11 million square meters of land that doesn't need to be turned from agriculture into a photovoltaic plant, because I just put a photovoltaic plant on my roof. That land is already not agricultural anymore because we have the building on there. So that I think they're doing well, because the money that they provide there is very cheap, and also, it really, it's not super intrusive. It's only in the procurement process, so that's fine. It's much harder for them if you go into things like renovation and retrofitting, because then you start getting into way more complicated issues.
I'm sorry to hear this retrofitting is a little bit of a problem for everybody, and I agree with what Patrick has said and what you're saying. There's problems and something to amend the wrong. It's worse than to do it right from the beginning. So obviously there has to be a plan, an investment plan from the very beginning that already has sustainability in it. And what we see is that buildings, depending on which use you have, that are basically open today were designed few months or few years back. So I have the sense that sometimes real estate investors or real estate entrepreneurs are looked at as great entrepreneurs, because they see that we are not doing things at the speed that the other industries are doing, but the length of the projects, the cycle of life of the project is completely different. Now, when you assess a large portfolio, and now I'm going to you, Omar, you have a large portfolio of different uses again. Mm-hmm. How can you assess that the value that you're bringing into bringing sustainability will resound at the board?
There's a couple of things which come into play then when you're doing this analysis. First of all, if you are retrofitting or refurbishing a building because you feel that either now or in 2 or 3 years' time it's going to lose interest from occupiers. So occupiers might require a certain energy certificate or a certain sustainability brand on it, like a LEED or BREEAM, in order for your building to be competitive or to be a place where they would like to work. So if you don't do it, you're at a loss of missing out on that tenant. Then you have the loss of missing out on that tenant, and the loss of missing out on that income. The loss of missing out on that income affects the capital value of your property, affects the capital value of the property, impacts how much, if you are borrowing money from the markets, how much you can borrow from the markets. So there's that element of it. So that analysis is taken into account. So if you don't do it, what are you going to do with the property in 5 or 10 years' time? Then there's other reason to do it, or you could look at it another way. It's a way of preserving capital value going into the future. So it makes your portfolio more robust, more resilient in terms of property values will either be held or increased. And then on an operational level, we touched on this already, by doing those improvements, it creates benefit from the occupiers from the point of view the cost of their consumption is less. So again, this feeds into the thing about it being a more attractive building compared to one that hasn't made those climate-adjusted changes to the fabric or to the construction. So these are the kind of discussions which go on. These are the kind of inputs which are then run through cash flows and then presented to the board. So yeah, we at CPI have a very diverse portfolio. Some of it is quite old. I think average age could be somewhere around 25 years, 30 years old, some of the building. Not all, the average age is about 25 years across the portfolio. So we have some assets which we know we're going to either have to repurpose these assets, demolish them, or sell them. Mm-hmm. Because for that particular asset, given where it is and what it is and where the market's going, we don't feel that the current use is sustainable in 10 years' time or 5 years' time. So we're continually having to look through that and kind of streamline and prune the portfolio and make some changes where we can.
Right, and I'm going back to you, Stefan. I want to understand also, I want the audience to understand the role of the policymakers, the legislators, into how, because we're talking about efficiency as a driver for sustainability, which is great. But we have another driver for sustainability, which is the legislation, mm-hmm. What we're obliged to do. Of course, the legislation is created to create more efficiency, to green the economy. But some people will look into it only because they have to do it, mm-hmm. because it's compulsory. Where is the balance? Do you think there is a balance already in between what is compulsory, what are the carrots and what are the sticks? How do you see this in the market?
Well, just to add to Omar as well, what we see at the moment also with RICS is that there's also an ad hoc decision that is currently made. So this is where an investor wants to exit a building and does a risk analysis and see, okay, if I don't do these 5 or 6 actions to reduce my carbon footprint, I will get, let's say, discounted, because the new investor will ask a discount for the fact that she's doing the ESG analysis and just covers that the capex is not, far enough to reduce that carbon footprint. That's one. For legislative, we see the EU taxonomy is coming towards us, is already here, although the translation of the EU taxonomy takes time. This is where RICS is also working with let's say, the local green building councils here in Czech Republic, the Czech Green Building Council, with several lawyers looking at, okay, what does become compulsory at what year, and this is really still vague, and this is why companies like the 2 gentlemen next to me, they're the pioneers in that sense, saying, okay, we're not going to wait for that, we're going to do it because we see the problem already coming from miles away. As where a large part of the market, and you were mentioning a percentage, I don't know, could be 50, 60, maybe 65% of the market still says, in the scene, like, okay, let's see what will happen. You know, we're not that large, you know, our leverage is not that big, but we know examples. For example, I'm Dutch, so from the Netherlands, where the government also took the initiative, not waiting for EU taxonomy, but saying, listen, we have our own governmental decision made in 2050, we want to be circular in the whole country. Well, good luck, guys, and I'm Dutch, so. But they say, okay, we need to push that commercial area faster because there's money available. They need to improve that stock because the carbon footprint of the real estate is large. We know that. It goes towards 50% if we look on global level. So what if we take those landlords, those owners, and push them? We say, okay, offices cannot be lower as a C rating, the PNB in Czech Republic, or energy performance certificate in a more global term, needs to be on a C rating, which is already quite a significant level for existing portfolio, for standing buildings. So it means if you want to continue having an office, you need to invest money. You need to have you need to take the glass out, put double or triple glass in there. You need to maybe redo your roof and put thicker insulation, heat pumps, other kinds of let's say investments like building management system with your air conditioning also going to well-being inside the building. So. Legislation, yes, it's coming. We don't know when, and then we come to the carbon real estate monitor, real estate risk monitor, which is being done in a lot of companies now as well. It's CRREM, is where per asset, per building, or per portfolio we calculate where the stranding risk is, and the stranding risk of a building means that they are not complying with the Paris Treaty 2030. I hope for most of you that rings a large bell. This is where was agreed, okay, if we go on the decarbonization road of 1.5 degree increase, we can calculate for a building when that building is not complying anymore. For a lot of buildings, this is next year, the year after already. And then you see, okay, you need to invest this kind of money. Big changes, renewable on-site. As Richard just was saying, the best thing is just put solar, wind, or whatever you have in access. We have squeezed a lot of water, you know, generate renewable energy to reduce that carbon footprint. And then you see the stranding risk immediately 10 years forward. This is for investors also interesting, saying, okay, for your risk management, I can invest. And that also comes back, and it's probably the last I need to say about that, is also which country are you in? We're in Czech Republic. Not so great, because our national grid here, Poland, ouch, you know, but there are other countries like Sweden, you're much better. So in your calculations, your asset is much better in that country than here. Yeah. So yeah, the forces are coming, so the carbon tax probably will come, so yeah.
We have heard about this. Patrick, please.
With this legislation, you are right how you are saying, but I can use another angle of legislation when we think that they are a little bit slow with the reality. Because we at the Skanska, we invented together with Technical University product, we call it Rebetong, what is like a recycled concrete. So it means that you demolish whatever, and then you recycle the stones again, you have the machines and so on, and then from that you create again the concrete. But now, what is according to legislation, we cannot use this concrete, because it is not was produced according to norms which we have from the stones like that, from the quarry there. So we have the same quality, we have the same efficiency, it was measured everything, but you cannot use it for the highways, you cannot use it for the buildings. So it's the norms could change as well with that, and you know, it's helping this recycling economy. It would help a lot. And there are just, I don't know how many years behind the reality, and it could help for free. And even it is the same price, even cheaper, but we cannot use it because it's not according to the norm. It's just another example, not only from real estate, but also from the standard highways.
It's a very valid point, because we have to add some innovation to the things that we were doing before so that we do it better. The problem is that innovation available everywhere? Because we are all very international here, from very different countries working. Some of us are from international, I mean, from abroad, but working in local companies. Some people, you know, I think we have the whole thing. In some places, legislation and the market will be there if you come up with a new idea and you want to put it out and you prove that it's workable. But what I hear, Patrick, is that it's not the same in here. Do you think that this kind of innovation will be available and open to use in other places rather than in Central Europe? Is Central Europe a laggard in this? Are we running behind?
No. Of course, if I look at Scandinavia, where we have a lot of examples, there are some in some areas in front of us, but we have also smart people here and a lot of people here in Central Europe. It was in Poland, I know in Slovakia, create some new stuff, so which we are transferring. And if you are in the big company, we are of course sharing a lot about these experiences. And one example which I had last week, we had a big conference in Stockholm. We had a very nice building in Norway, powerhouse, and it's producing more energy than consume. So this is creating energy, whole building with the solar panels, with other stuff, that even selling electricity to the railway station, which is the closest one. Yeah, so, but now it is expensive. It's not like that everybody wants to buy it. Yeah. So, but we need to find a way. But there are the buildings which can create even more energy than is needed for that building. Mm-hmm. So that's what we need to share as well. And it's across the countries. And maybe one last comment. There are some colleagues from US, and that is a big move. So here we have some progress. But in US, I heard it was like a big jump now. Now a lot of companies a lot of clients talking about sustainable issues. 6-7 years ago, it was nobody cared even. Nobody wanted to even to pay any cent for that. So it's a big move now. Where it will end, difficult to say now.
So then, Richard, Omar, large portfolios. What will it take for you to go to the board, to go to your peers and say, I want to embed this innovation? It's on early stage, but we know it works.
Look, I think what you do is you pilot things. Now, one of the advantages of not being the first person to do things is you don't have to pay the cost of learning for the mistakes for the first guy. So the building that you built in Norway that is energy positive cost an absolute fortune. The next one will be a bit more efficient. The third one will be even more efficient. The fourth one may even make some money. Yeah. So I rather try and build the fourth building, not the first one. Yeah,
banker.
We are a for-profit company. But part of what you can do is you can also say, okay, but we can pilot stuff, we can try stuff. Let's see what works. Maybe you say, okay, well, let's try and build the greenest building in the Czech Republic, which we just did. So you try and put some stuff in there and say, okay, then how do the returns work? What can we do again? What could we take from that and put into the next building and the one after that and the one after that? So it's about, trial and error, but you can't just say, okay, we're going to do everything everywhere all at one go without having a business case, because that doesn't work.
So the business case is what the board looks at, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, at CPI they're doing it, they're not doing it cross-board. The CPI is not really a development, they do develop properties, but it's not the mainstay of their business. They tend to buy existing buildings and do some development where they have a land bank. But there are two examples in the Czech Republic of office buildings, older buildings, one of them built in Prague in the 1930s, in Prague 7, next to the Magistrala or the Wilsonova listed building, so heritage protected property. And they took off the facade, the old facade, put on a new facade, changed all the internal ventilation, plumbing, electricals, lighting, ventilation, air conditioning, heating. The building is 30% more efficient than it was, or maybe based on some calculations, might be more after the building has been used for a couple of years. We'll be able to monitor that. So I think the word making a case or a business case. So it is happening. I like to talk about the reusing or recycling construction materials. It's another big step forward for the real estate industry. A lot more companies are looking at those things, looking at timber construction. So looking at lumber, aggregate lumber, or somehow putting it through a process, and the structural integrity of those columns are the same as concrete, and they're fireproofed as well. Yes. Also requires less load from the foundation, so less concrete required in the foundations. And you see more and more of these buildings being built across Europe, And it's coming here as well. People are talking about it in Prague already. I think Skanska might be one of them that are talking about it. So you see that it was mentioned, you know, copying others. We're seeing changes in other parts of the world. Those changes are being adopted, maybe slowly. I think we would all like to move faster than we can. But I think sometimes financial reality and sometimes even local legislation, regulations, which are an obstacle, are not helping. But there is a positive side. I feel there is a movement within the real estate industry to look at these with a much more open mind than in the past and try things in terms from a sustainable point of view.
Yeah. So on like the timber buildings, we can build a warehouse with timber instead of concrete. I just can't get a fire permit for it. Because according to the fire brigade, timber is flammable and concrete isn't.
That's a very good example. This is about the mindset as well, because from the timber, from the wood to build a house, this is absolutely normal in Scandinavia, in the north of Finland, Norway, where is a cold like
a different kind of fire
but
there.
We are not. But in Central Europe, it will be too cold. No, we cannot have from wood my house. So I need to have bricks, everything. It's totally wrong sometimes mindset, in that. So and now we are even trying at Skanska one timber really residential, and we will see how it will be accepted by the market, by the people, because sometimes it's in the head. And with that, we can change a lot also, only just changing our way of working.
Yeah, which brings the topic of disclosures. What you do, being able to compare apples with apples. What you do here, what you do there, what you do in different parts of the company, which, again, is something that is going to be compulsory for many companies, especially for the large ones. They have to disclose. They have to report. And with good reports of best in class in the industry, the others will learn. So maybe this is the way also to push it towards the legislator in the local markets. Say, look, this has been done already a number of times in Scandinavia. Why don't we do it here, if it's possible? Of course, you have to have the technology, you have to import the technology, but we want to do it this way, because also this will help us go back to the financiers, go back to the bank, talk about the green asset ratio that they have in their portfolio. How much are they financing? Because, you know, if in the end there is a blocker either in legislation or in the technology, you cannot do it. It doesn't matter. And maybe one day the bank will stop. So coming back to what this conference is about, which is finance, I'd like to have a 2-minute thoughts about how can we from the industry push the financial industry to help. What is there that we can tell them, hey, this needs to be done, but it has to come from you.
Want me to go first?
Please.
Yeah, okay. Look, I think one of the problems with ESG is if you look at how many different certifications we could take as an organization, it's ridiculous. And depending on which one I take, I could look really good or not so good, depending on what policies I wrote or whatever I did or didn't do. So one of the things that really helps, if you look at the finance industry, there are 3 big rating agencies. They use pretty much the same methodology, and everyone understands what a AAA rating is, what a single A rating is, and what a BBB rating is, and what's a junk bond and whatever. So you need to have some form of standardization of interpretation of the data by an external party, which is what a rating agency does. They look at our balance sheet, they look at our business model, and they say, we think that this is a rating, for us, BBB-. And everyone understands what that means. At the moment, if someone says, I have a sustainability index of 11, well, what does that mean? And how is that compared to a lot of other people? And how does that compare? Someone says, I'm MSCI, whatever, You can't compare the apple with the apple. You're comparing a fruit salad with a different fruit salad and wondering whether it's a good one or not. Yeah, so that's the first thing that you need to have. And if you look, everyone, or the big companies are all going to have to start reporting the same data at plus minus the same time. In the same way that you do your financial data now, you're going to have to produce your non-financial data. In 2024, we're all going to have it in there. Will be a combined annual report, double materiality, including not just the financial, but also the non-financial data, and on a standardized basis, and checked and signed off by the auditors. It's going to be fun, but there you go. And then everyone will have a level playing field. then it's easier. But that's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line. By the time people have a track record of comparing the same numbers, that's going to take some time.
Okay, so standardization is one of the things that we have to push forward. Stefan, your thoughts?
The valuation and transparency. So valuation, because I think at the moment it's very difficult for the agencies to either put a rating or a number on it. I work with several different agencies, and they're looking for, I think we discussed it already, for comparables. It's very hard at the moment. Plus, in this region, there's no transparency anyway. You know, what my neighbor does, I don't know. I don't have a clue. I don't know what they're asking for rent. I don't know what their energy consumption is. If you compare that to the UK or other countries, it's very different. For the valuation with RICS, we're working together here locally with the CBA, the Czech Banking Association, to try to come together to find a way to put a stamp on it somehow, saying, okay, this building, you know, has this ESG value, or whatever we want to call it. So you need legislators on the table, you need the agencies, you know, the evaluators on the table, you need the developers on the table. So this is what we're organizing now. But just as Richard says, there's 2-3 years down the line. It needs work, yeah.
So valuation and transparency. Patrick?
I also like this standardization. I think it will help as well a lot. So, and if I take it from this construction perspective again, and we will be at the beginning, we will start to really have a standardized product. We will have a prefabricates. We can have really systems which are automatic, so you can produce them much more cheaper, and then also with more sustainable approach. Then in total business case will be positive at the end. So the renewables, changing classical automatic machinery to electricity, it's also, there is a lot of small things which can be done, and at the end, after some time, we will see the result. And I see also our clients really, earlier when they was checking and the banks, when you said so, earlier it was normal, it was just do something with sustainability, it was just a click the box. And now some clients are even interested in that. So this is changing as well. So that it's moving, like this conference is helping to that, but step by step, but it's evolution. It's not revolution that we will do it really in one day.
Omar?
Yeah, good comment. Evolution, not revolution. It seems like that to me as well. I think it's just by examples as to how companies are conducting themselves and how they're actually standing behind their green credentials, what might help the financing market. Because I get a feeling that we're at the beginning, or we're at the early phase of how things are being measured. There are different, we already mentioned that there are different measurement standards out there as to your ESG credentials, which confuses people so they don't know, is this good versus that one. The other thing is that to avoid greenwashing, I think companies need to, or those which are eligible, because not everyone has to report everything, depending on the size and whether you're a listed company, etc. So, you need to stand behind some, this is the pathway that we've adopted, and this is how it's been measured, and this is how it's been audited. And just from my own experience, that's the pathway that we've gone down at CPI. We've got targets to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 by 32%. Every year they're audited. It's just not scope 1 and scope 2, scope 1, 2, and 3 as well. And most of your emissions are, as we know, are in the scope 3 bracket. So in terms of how your results have been audited and checked, I think will add some comfort and some transparency as to where you're going and how you're proving that you're getting there, which creates some comfort for those financing those projects. I think they're learning as well. I think the level of expertise on the finance side, they're still kind of probing around in the dark, trying to work out what's the best methodology. And you're asking bankers to start understanding, ventilation systems. I mean, it's a tough call for guys like me who work in real estate to understand heat pumps. Ask someone who's in financing to explain heat pumps to you.
Yeah, there has to be.
The point I'm making is that the gap in education and technical know-how needs to be bridged. Whether that's with external consultants. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you set a pathway, around carbon or decarbonisation is then how is it measured, and how can you prove that you're doing what you say you're doing? You know.
Perfect. I think yes, audited credentials are important. That are standardized. I think we are here that at the end it's a question of being clear about what you do. Everybody will understand in the industry that what you are financing goes to the ends. So the means are really there, and they can put it forward. We have just for less than 5 minutes. I don't know if there's any questions already from the audience or in Slido. Yeah.
Hello, I would have a question. My name is Eva Neudertová, working these days for Česká spořitelna Bank. Thank you for the discussion, and I would like to comment 2 things from Richard and Patrick. Richard, you mentioned that ideal would be to test the pilots within the sustainable and environmental improvements, and then implement what is good. And Patrick, you said that this sustainability is rather evolution than revolution. But my issue is that it seems within the topic of climate changes and adaptation, we don't have this time like evolution, like this millions of years. It seems that we are like eating these carbon budgets. And I have read just the speaker from Tuesday working within United Nations, this climate, head of climate risk, etc. And there is some study saying that these big listed companies will eat the carbon budget like within year 2026. So my comment or question is like, do you think that we have time for slow evolution when we're speaking about standards, because especially in Czech Republic and this Central Europe, we are just slow and behind Europe, especially speaking like energy-wise. So I just wonder, do you think that we can be faster as the big companies, or how we can be faster to help to the market, because we belongs to the like biggest and those who can help and change the standards as well. So if you comment it, like, do you think that we have the time for waiting or piloting? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. When the Russians invaded the Ukraine last year, everyone said you're going to run out of energy in Europe. What the Europeans did was they massively reduced their energy consumption. The most sustainable form of energy production is the energy that you never use, because it was never produced in the first place. So the simple thing is, the easy thing for everyone to do is try and reduce the energy that you're using now. That's one of the big benefits of a green lease, because the tenant is obliged to work together with the landlord to reduce their consumption of all types of utilities. And that's the best way and the quickest way to do it. You're not going to find a solution for a building. It takes 2.5 years to build an office. You pilot something in the office, it takes 2.5 years to build. It's going to take you 2.5 years to find out how it works. So you have to have time for those things. But there are things that you can do quicker, sooner, that everyone can do. It's not just the real estate industry. It's everyone else in all of their daily lives. And it worked last year, because suddenly there isn't an energy shortage anymore.
Yeah. Regarding evolution, question how you take it, how long evolution should long. I'm more than 10 years at Skanska, and I'm from the beginning, from day one, there was discussion about it. For me, 10 years we are discussing about sustainability, so I take it like evolution. For someone who jumped on the train 2 years ago, it's maybe for evolution, yeah. So it's faster. But for me, it's quite a long way already. And how much time we have? Yeah, it's a good question. Difficult to say. I don't know. If we have 2 years or 10 or 50.
Any other question from the audience? Yep.
May I have a short question? Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, thank you. My name is Veselin Baliev. I'm working for Cemex Czech Republic. This is a manufacturer of cement and concrete, the bad guys. So my question is, our business is subject of EU ETS, I mean the allowances, carbon O2 allowances. You guys will be subject of the same regulation in 2.5 years from now. Are you working on plans how to fulfill the new obligations that will come, and if yes, what are your plans?
No, for now, that's something that you have to work on. Unfortunately, the regulator is going to come after all of us at some stage. Yeah, so you try and get ahead of them as much as you can. You guys can go to you and say, let's buy some green cement. Green cement is just cement that's produced by green energy. There's no greener than the other one. It's just the way you power the thing is. Same for green steel. But we will try and keep working on improving overall. And you talk to someone like Stefan, who's a very creative guy, and you come up with ideas of how you can improve. And it's lots and lots of individual small steps, not one big one.
Yeah, and we are for many years already working on that, trying to every step to be better. We started with measurements of CO2, what is necessary for our building. So we measured reporting ourselves, comparing year to year what we can do. When we have a new plan, we're discussing about the different usage of materials which are more sustainable. So there is a lot of things ongoing all the way. So I think we will make it on time. We even shortened this period for us. We want to be also neutral, as I said, 45. We want to even 2030. We want to less than 70% down comparing to 2015. We are on 57% today. So yes, it's possible to do, even with CEMEX. I know.
Julian is looking at me with a face. So we have 2 more questions, if you don't mind. Right. The people have endured the hour, so can we please? Thank you, Julian.
Hello, I have a short one. Donatas Ditkus from GND. Are you using EU taxonomy for the assessment of your real estate activities and buildings?
Yes.
Yes. Who's
together with SFDR, yeah. So it's part of it for sure.
Maybe you can describe shortly how you do yourself, or what are the most largest challenges in assessing alignment with EU taxonomy?
The question is if we do it largely ourselves?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And CPT, and as well, how are you doing that, and what are the main challenges for you, if you have any?
Well,
thank you.
I didn't understand the question. Sorry, I can't.
Me either.
Acoustically. You understood it, but you
yeah. But yes, so within ESG, there is, let's say, an ESG department with very knowledgeable people who are doing it itself. So basically, scanning whatever is happening on EU taxonomy level and translating that to the portfolio and to the company, or maybe to the company and the portfolio. Doesn't matter which order that is, but yeah.
And on the CPI webpage, on their annual accounts or management accounts, you'll see they have a page on EU taxonomy. They've selected the economic activities and which of their activities are eligible, and then aligned in terms of turnover, capex, and opex.
The same for us.
Yep. Yeah. So it's reported or disclosed, so you can go on and can have a look at it. So it's been done. Yeah. But then not every companies up here might be required to report on them, but not everybody who's working in the real estate industry or even a real estate owner, yes, has to report yet on those matters. But those who are or should be are required by legislation to report should be reporting, yes.
Yeah. It's companies from 250 employees up there currently. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I presume, yep, that's still on, good. My name's Chris Dixon. I come from PedalMe, which is a green logistics company based in London. Now, I heard mention of Scope 3 emissions there. Now, from a logistics point of view, i.e. everything that goes on outside your buildings, what drivers are there for you as an industry, if there are, to take responsibility of Scope 3 emissions? Actually, that sounded accusatory. Whose responsibility is it to place upon landlords, constructors, policies on Scope 3
Omar.
Very good question. I don't know whose responsibility it is. I mean, some companies have elected to report their Scope 3 emissions, and I can only give you my own experience. So, and one example within that experience is that the business that I work for has hotels. Yeah, and in the hotels we have laundry coming in, and then we have to work out how much energy was used in washing those sheets, etc. So as part of our procurement policy, when the service provider is appointed, those things have to be disclosed. And actually, I think it's based on some calculation method by looking at the invoice and how much it costs. You can then break it back to work out what your Scope 3 emission was. Now, we've elected, not every company does, to report Scope 3 emissions. So at this stage, I think it seems to be a little bit optional, but we've gone down that road, so we've had to use those procedures and methods to get there. And the famous examples about a table being made and the table coming into the factory and then going out of the factory, again, I suppose it depends who's elected to report on those Scope 3 emissions, but it gets very tricky, I think, and that's why I think a lot of people try and duck and avoid it just now. That's the sense that I get anyway.
So that's it. I already have two heads nodding, and we have to give up. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been quite enlightening. We see the practice. We hear this is going to be recorded, so there's some other questions. Probably you can direct it through ISFC to all of us. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. And I thank Raúl for the moderation as well, and exactly as expected, that was an amazing panel, I think, with wealth of experience on the stage. And for anyone thinking now, there isn't much gender diversity on this stage, which you could. Exactly, so I would maybe just address that as well. We actually had a female panelist who was one of the first who confirmed, one of the leaders in the industry as well, but unfortunately had to cancel. So, but we still get a very, very interesting discussion, and I hope you agree. We will now have a slightly shorter break, but then for the price of some interesting questions and answers. And then at 3 p.m., we'll have a very unique discussion with the CEO of the Prague Stock Exchange and Budapest Stock Exchange as well, so with two CEOs. And I think that actually has a lot of potential, and we'll explore what capital markets of the future could look like with sustainability. So thank you once again, and enjoy the break.